Acts 13:26 through 29 tells us, "Brethren, sons of Abraham, and those among you who fear God, to us the message of this salvation has been sent. For those who live in Jerusalem and their rulers, recognizing neither him nor the utterances of the prophets which are read every Sabbath, fulfilled these by condemning him. And though they found no ground for putting him to death, they asked Pilate that he be executed. When they had carried out all that was written concerning him, they took him down from the cross and laid him in the tomb. There was a certain old recluse who lived deep in the mountains of Colorado. When he died, distant relatives came from the city to collect his valuables. They arrived there. They found an old shack with an outhouse beside it. Inside the shack, next to the rock fireplace, was an old cooking pot and his mining equipment. A cracked table with a three-legged chair stood guard by the tiny window, and a kerosene lamp served as a centerpiece for the table. In a dark corner of the little room was a dilapidated cot with a threadbare bedroll on it. And this was all that the man had, all his worldly possessions. So they picked up some of the old relics and they started to leave. As they were driving away, an old friend of the recluse on his mule flagged them down, and he said, "Do you mind if I come in and get some of my friend's belongings?" And they said, "Go right ahead," because, you know, what could they possibly want? What could he possibly want from this old shack? Nothing of value was there. So the old friend entered the shack, and he walked directly over to the table. He reached under it and lifted one of the floorboards. Then he proceeded to take out all the gold that his friend had discovered over the past 53 years, enough to have built a palace. The recluse died with only his friend knowing his true worth. As the friend looked out of the window and watched the cloud of dust behind the relative's car, he said they should have gotten to know him better. I wonder, as we reflect on this Palm Sunday, as we watch the Lamb, Jesus Christ, who suffered and died a criminal's death 2,000 years ago, that we too have missed out on the gold. Do we know our friend's true worth? Do we treat him as if he's some old relic of history who lived thousands of years ago in faraway Middle East? What's that got to do with me? You know, yeah, sure, he died. And maybe he's some tragic hero, and we go away empty from this assembly today, or will we go away with the gold? Have we missed the gold? Will someday somebody say of us that we should have gotten to know Jesus better? The Bible tells us in Acts 13, it is to us that this message of salvation has been sent. This means the invitation to not miss out on the gold is given. It is sent not by email or airmail or the mailman, but through the Bible, the personal message of God's own Son, the very person of Jesus. This is how another translation of the Bible puts it. This message of salvation has been precisely targeted to you. The true worth of Jesus is revealed in and through us. This is why true Christians everywhere called this awful, bloody cross event good, even though it meant the suffering and death of God's Son. They know on that hill, on Calvary, where Jesus died, is the gold sent from heaven. But the people of Jerusalem and their rulers missed the gold. These are the folks who should have seen it coming, and they missed it. Now, the pastor asked me to read this passage, and then he asked me to sing a song. But I'm going to share something that's been on my heart during this whole message. My story is I was raised in church, and my parents, were praying parents, and they brought me to church, and I was saved at a young age, and I knew that there's a God out there, there's a Jesus who died on the cross and loves me, and this is what I've been told. But it wasn't until recently that it all became real for me. On September 24th of last year, my brother shot himself, and My family has been going through so much. The pain and the agony that I feel is nothing compared to what Jesus felt on that cross. So last night we were watching The Passion of the Christ, and it was so real for me. It was through this whole experience that I know what God has done for me and that He loves me. And I'll tell you why. Because if it weren't for my friends here at this church, for these praying friends, I feel a complete peace. The peace that Pastor was talking about, that Jesus brings us. I am at peace. Yeah, I have bad days. And when they sing the song Glory Land, they sang that at my brother's funeral. I have a hard time with that song, and so I walk out, and that's fine. But I am at peace, and Jesus brings me that peace, and I have never felt Him so real as I do now, and I thank God for that every day. Walking on the road to Jerusalem, the time had come to sacrifice again. My 2 small sons, they walked beside me on the road. The reason that they came was to watch the Lamb. Daddy, Daddy, what will we see here? There's so much that we don't understand. So I told them of Moses and Father Abraham. And then I said, dear children, watch the Lamb. For there will be so many in Jerusalem today. We must be sure the Lamb doesn't run away. And I told them of Moses and Father Abraham. And then I said, dear children, watch the Lamb. When we reached the city, I knew something must be wrong. There were no joyful worshipers there, no joyful worship songs. I stood there with my children in the midst of angry men. Then I heard the crowd cry out, crucify Him. We tried to leave the city, but we could not get away. Forced to play in this drama, a part I did not wish to play. Why upon this day were men condemned to die? And why were we standing here where soon they would pass by? I looked and said, even now they come. The first one cried for mercy, the people gave him none. The second one was violent, he was arrogant and loud. I still can hear his angry voice screaming at the crowd. Then someone said, there's Jesus. I scarce believe my eyes. A man so badly beaten, he barely looked alive. Blood poured from his body, from the thorns upon his brow, running down the cross and falling to the ground. I watched him as he struggled. I watched him as he fell. The cross came down upon his back. The crowd began to yell. In that moment, I felt such agony. In that moment, I felt such loss. Until a Roman soldier grabbed my arm and screamed, "You carry his cross." At first, I tried to resist him. Then his hand reached for his sword, and so I knelt and took the cross from the Lord. I placed it on my shoulder and started down the street. The blood that he'd been shedding was running down my cheek. They led us to Golgotha. They drove nails deep in his feet and hands. And yet upon the cross I heard him pray, "Father, forgive them." Oh, never have I seen such love in any other eyes. Into thy hands I commit my spirit, he prayed, and then he died. I stood for what seemed like years. I'd lost all sense of time, until I felt two tiny hands holding tight to mine. My children stood there weeping. I heard the oldest say, "Father, please forgive us." The lamb ran away. Daddy, Daddy, what have we seen here? There's so much that we don't understand. So I took them in my arms, and we turned and faced the cross. And then I said, "Dear children, watch the Lamb."